If you are prepping for a trivia night, or if you just have this deep curiosity about the origins of the cultural institutions we kind of take for granted, you're in the exact right place. Welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive.
Yeah, really glad to be here for this one.
Because we are looking at a massive stack of sources today. We're detailing the history, the evolution, and the, frankly, insane records of the NHL's ultimate prize.
Right, the Stanley Cup final.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to uncover that surprising history. We want to show you how North America's oldest professional sports trophy transformed from this very simple amateur challenge cup into the heavily scheduled broadcast spectacle you see today.
And it really is a pleasure to analyze this one, because we aren't just looking at a static list of, which team won in which year.
Right.
We are going to examine exactly how this championship was shaped over the decades. I mean, it's a story influenced by constantly changing rules.
Global pandemic.
Yeah, global pandemics, complex legal battles. The trophy we see hoisted today is the product of a deeply chaotic, totally unpredictable history.
It really is. So let's go all the way back to the origins. I want to introduce you to Lord Stanley of Preston. Back in 1892, he's the Governor General of Canada, and he decided to donate a trophy. Originally, it had a rather clunky name.
Very clunky.
The Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
And it was strictly meant for Canada's top-ranking amateur ice hockey club. The Montreal Hockey Club actually won the very first one in 1893.
What's fascinating here is that specific word, challenge.
Right.
It was not a standard playoff tournament trophy like the ones we're accustomed to today.
Not at all.
The champions held onto the cup until one of two specific scenarios played out. Either they lost their own league title to another club in the regular season,
Okay.
or a champion from a completely different league issued a formal challenge, played them in a final match, and defeated them to claim the silver.
You can think of it almost like a championship belt in boxing.
Exactly like boxing. You held it until someone officially challenged you for it and physically took it away on the ice.
And for those early years, this was strictly a prize for amateurs. Professional teams were entirely locked out.
Completely ineligible.
Yeah, they didn't even become eligible to challenge for the Stanley Cup until 1906. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the 1914 series.
Yes. By 1914, the trustees who managed the Cup decided that these interleague challenges should only happen after the regular season ended, which leads to what is essentially the first World Series of hockey.
Right.
We get a prearranged series between the champion of the National Hockey Association, the NHA, which was the Toronto Hockey Club,
And the champion of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, the PCHA, the Victoria Aristocrats.
Exactly. Now, you would naturally assume that organizing the first major East meets West championship series would be a highly professional operation.
You would assume that, yes.
Yeah.
But it was entirely bogged down by bureaucratic misunderstanding.
It's hilarious.
The Victoria Club traveled all the way east, but they hadn't actually filed a formal application to the Stanley Cup trustees to challenge for the cup.
How does a professional team travel across the continent for a championship and just, forget to submit the paperwork?
I mean, it was a total comedy of assumptions. The PCHA president, Lester Patrick, thought he didn't need to file a formal challenge with the trustees.
Right.
He assumed Emmett Quinn, the commissioner of the NHA, was handling all the paperwork and making the necessary arrangements.
And meanwhile, the Stanley Cup trustees were sitting in their offices feeling completely ignored.
Yeah, ignored by these upstart professional leagues who were seemingly arranging matches without any permission.
So it's March 17, 1914, right before this highly anticipated event, and a letter arrives from the trustees stating they are not letting the Stanley Cup travel west under any circumstances.
They were completely serious, too.
They refused to consider Victoria a proper challenger because the team never formally verified themselves. They were entirely prepared to pull the plug on the whole series.
They were. But the very next day, a trustee named William Foran had to step in and publicly state it was all just a profound misunderstanding.
Damage control.
Exactly. The tension eventually diffused, largely because Toronto simply went out onto the ice and swept Victoria in a best-of-5 series in just 3 games.
So the Cup stayed put anyway.
Right, which made the trustees' threat somewhat moot.
So what does this all mean for the broader history of the Cup? Because to you or me, it seems like a minor administrative hiccup, but the sources actually frame it as a turning point.
The takeaway here is monumental for the sport. That specific 1914 drama effectively ended the strict, overbearing influence of the Stanley Cup trustees.
Wow.
Yeah. After that administrative mess, William Foran wrote to the NHA president to officially state that the trustees were now perfectly satisfied to let the professional leagues make all the arrangements for the matches themselves.
Just giving up the control.
They recognized that they needed the top professional leagues to keep the trophy prominent in the public eye, especially since another trophy, the Allen Cup, had established itself as the premier prize for amateur hockey. It was the exact moment the pro leagues took the wheel.
Which totally opens the door for the trophy to expand its footprint. In 1914, an American-based team called the Portland Rosebuds joined the PCHA.
First American team.
Yeah, and the trustees made this unprecedented statement. They said the cup was no longer exclusively for the best team in Canada. It was now for the best team in the world.
A huge shift.
And by 1917, the Seattle Metropolitans actually became the first American team to win it. But just as the tournament was expanding its borders, we hit 1919.
Yeah.
The Montreal Canadiens and the Seattle Metropolitans were battling in the finals. The series was tied at 2 wins apiece with one tie game. And then the Spanish influenza epidemic forced the total cancellation of the series.
It is such a sobering historical moment. It was the very first time the Stanley Cup was not awarded. You have two incredible teams pushing each other to the absolute limit, completely halted by a severe health crisis. When the sport finally caught its breath and resumed, the landscape of the leagues themselves began to shift dramatically. We start to see a significant consolidation of power.
How many leagues were operating at this point, realistically?
By 1922, there were actually 3 different professional leagues actively competing for the Cup.
3?
Yeah, you had the NHL, the PCHA, and the newly created Western Canada Hockey League, or WCHL. Because there were 3 champions, the organizers had to invent this awkward semi-final bye system.
A 3-league tournament sounds incredibly difficult to balance. How did they determine who played who?
2 of the league champions would play each other in a semi-final series, and the third champion simply received a free pass straight to the final.
That's wild.
It was an awkward structure, and it really didn't last long. In 1924, 2 of the leagues merged. Then, by 1925, the Victoria Cougars won the Cup, and that name is vital for you to remember.
Why is that?
Because the 1925 Victoria Cougars hold the distinction of being the absolute last non-NHL team to ever win the Stanley Cup.
Ever.
By 1926, the WCHL folded entirely. Most of the premier players moved to the NHL, leaving the NHL as the sole league competing for the trophy.
So the NHL essentially inherited the trophy by just being the last league standing.
Pretty much.
But they didn't actually own it, right?
Yeah.
From what we've discussed, it was still legally a Challenge Cup managed by trustees.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the off-ice legal maneuvering becomes just as important as the on-ice play. In 1947, the NHL officially reached an agreement with the remaining Cup trustees at the time, P.D. Ross and Cooper Smeaton.
Yeah.
This agreement explicitly granted control of the Cup to the NHL. It allowed the league to outright reject challenges from any independent or outside leagues that might want to play for it.
Wow.
They legally built a moat around the trophy to ensure it stayed within their ecosystem.
But wait, if Lord Stanley originally donated this trophy to the country as an open challenge cup, how did the NHL legally justify just taking exclusive ownership of it?
That exact question remained a quiet debate for decades, until it finally erupted in the courts. In 2006, there was a major case brought before the Ontario Superior Court, and the court found that the 1947 agreement actually went against Lord Stanley's original conditions.
A modern court ruled that the NHL was violating the stipulations set back in 1892.
Precisely. The context is crucial here, though. This lawsuit was happening in the wake of the 2004 to 2005 NHL lockout.
Right, where the league canceled its entire season.
Exactly, and the cup was not awarded. Because of this 2006 ruling, the NHL had to formally agree that if the league is ever not operating for a season, they must allow non-NHL teams to challenge for and play for the cup.
That is fascinating.
So legally, the trophy still retains that original 19th century DNA of an open challenge cup, even if the NHL manages it exclusively during normal operations.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to look at the actual gameplay during these formative decades, because early championship hockey was structurally bizarre.
Bizarre is the right word.
Since the final was an interleague championship in the early days, the differing leagues brought completely different rule books to the ice. The PCHA played with 7 men on the ice, utilizing a position called the rover.
Right, the rover.
While the NHA, and later the NHL, played the standard 6-man game. So during the Stanley Cup final, they would alternate the rule set every single game, Game 1 would be 6 players. Game 2 would be 7 players.
It forces you to imagine the sheer tactical chaos for the coaches and players.
Seriously.
You're competing for the ultimate prize, and every other night, the fundamental geometry of the ice changes. You have an extra skater out there disrupting passing lanes and defensive structure.
It's like playing 2 different sports.
Exactly. Teams had to build rosters capable of playing 2 distinctly different games within a single week. Furthermore, ties were permitted in the finals all the way until 1928, which could completely alter the momentum of a series without resolving a winner.
And once the NHL took sole control, you'd think things would standardize smoothly. But the playoff brackets themselves were constantly shape-shifting.
The formats were highly experimental. From 1929 to 1938, the NHL utilized a playoff structure that seems entirely counterintuitive today.
How so?
The 2 teams that finished in first place in their respective divisions were forced to play each other immediately in the semifinals.
That makes no sense. The 2 absolute best teams in the league had to eliminate each other before the championship round.
Yes. The victor of that heavyweight clash earned an automatic berth to the final. Meanwhile, the second and third place teams battled it out in their own separate, longer bracket to see who would eventually face that first place survivor.
That sounds grueling.
At the time, the logic was to ensure a true clash of titans, but practically it was deeply unbalanced. Eventually, the league transitioned into what fans call the Original Six era.
Just to clarify for anyone unfamiliar, the Original Six era refers to that long period of stability, right?
Correct. From 1942 down to 1967, the league operated with just 6 classic franchises. During this era, the playoff format finally smoothed out into a more traditional bracket.
Okay.
Then, from 1982 through 2020, we settled into the standard most fans recognize today, the champion of the Eastern Conference facing the champion of the Western Conference.
Right, until 2021.
Yeah, as we saw in 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic forced the league to temporarily realign geographically just to limit travel, which proves the tournament format remains adaptable to global events, much like it was in 1919.
As the on-ice product was stabilizing, the way fans actually consumed the game was undergoing a revolution. The leap to television broadcasting is a vital chapter in the Cup's history. And looking at the sources, the Canadian and American broadcasting journeys are wildly different. In Canada, they started broadcasting the final in 1953, and they treated it like a national institution from day one.
A huge cultural event.
Yeah. The CBC aired the English broadcasts with legends like Danny Gallivan doing play-by-play and Keith Dancy providing color commentary. Gallivan was the voice of the finals for decades, calling games all the way until 1978. And on the French language side, you had René Lecavalier anchoring the broadcasts on SRC.
The Canadian approach was unified and reverent. The American television market, however, treated the Stanley Cup final as an afterthought for decades.
It was incredibly fragmented. I mean, the very first U.S. broadcast didn't happen until 1962, and it was restricted to a local Chicago station, WGN.
Just local.
Network coverage didn't arrive until 1966 on NBC. And even then, networks like NBC and CBS would only broadcast selected games. They wouldn't even commit to showing the entire championship series.
Which severely limited the sport's ability to build national stars or a cohesive narrative in the United States. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, the broadcast rights bounced around constantly.
Just looking for a home.
Yeah, it was placed in syndication, it was aired on something called the Hughes Network, and eventually moved to early cable providers like the USA Network and Sports Channel America. ESPN held the rights for a period, but because there was no exclusive national coverage agreement, local broadcasters could still enforce regional blackouts.
It actually took until 1995 for the United States to secure an exclusive national network split between Fox and ESPN. That finally stabilized the viewing experience for American fans, leading to the highly produced broadcast rotations we see today with ABC and TNT.
Quite the journey.
It's a stark contrast. It took the U.S. over 40 years to treat the Stanley Cup final with the same unified broadcasting respect that Canadian television established back in 1953.
And that lack of early national exposure in the U.S. makes the historical statistics of the era even more fascinating. Because while the broadcasts were fragmented, the dynasties being built on the ice were legendary.
Which brings us perfectly to the records and the legends. When we look at the sources, the extremes of the Stanley Cup final are staggering. I'd love for you to break down some of these team records, starting with the sheer dominance of Montreal.
When it comes to the Stanley Cup, the Montreal Canadiens are the undisputed benchmark. They possess 24 total championship wins.
24.
They've made 35 appearances in the final. Between 1956 and 1960, they won the Cup 5 consecutive times. And perhaps most impressively, they appeared in the final for 10 consecutive years, from 1951 to 1960.
That is insane.
Their ability to monopolize regional talent and maintain a relentless standard of excellence during those mid-century eras is just unmatched in the sport's history.
But professional sports demand a loser for every winner. What about the teams on the other end of the spectrum?
Well, examining the losses provides crucial perspective on how brutally difficult this tournament is. The Boston Bruins hold the record for the most losses in the final, coming up short 14 times.
Ouch.
Conversely, you have a franchise like the Colorado Avalanche, who possess flawless efficiency. They have 0 losses in the finals. Every single time they navigate the playoffs and reach the final, they win the championship.
The heartbreak extends beyond just losing the final series, though. The sources detail some agonizing droughts where teams simply cannot get back to the pinnacle. The New York Rangers endured a 54-year gap between their championship wins in 1940 and 1994.
Yeah.
And then we have the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The Maple Leafs represent a unique kind of historical burden. They are currently enduring a 58-year drought just to appear in a final.
Just to appear.
Not to win it, but merely to secure a spot in the championship series. Their last appearance was in 1967. We are talking about multiple generations of fans who have lived their entire lives without seeing their franchise compete for the ultimate prize. It really underscores the immense parity and difficulty of the modern NHL structure.
Amidst all of those team struggles and long-term droughts, the individual performances recorded in these finals are phenomenal. The pressure is at its absolute highest, and certain players just elevate their game.
Jean Beliveau is a perfect example. He recorded 62 career points in the finals alone and scored 9 career game-winning goals in those championship series.
It's incredible.
That demonstrates a fundamental ability to execute when the stakes are at their absolute peak.
Maurice Richard is right there with him, recording 34 career goals in the finals while appearing in the championship series across 12 different years. And of course, Wayne Gretzky's numbers are almost incomprehensible.
Gretzky's 1988 performance defies logic. In that single final series, he accumulated 13 points and 10 assists.
In one series.
He was operating on a different tactical plane than everyone else on the ice, just dissecting defensive structures with ease.
We also have to highlight the goaltenders.
Yeah.
Clint Benedict, Frank McCool, and Martin Brodeur all share the record for the most shutouts in a single final series, which is 3.
3 shutouts in one series.
Blanking an opponent in the Stanley Cup final 3 separate times within a best-of-7 series is a masterclass in focus. But my favorite record from the source material, the most unexpected one, goes all the way back to the era of alternating rules. In 1917, a player named Bernie Morris scored 14 goals in a single series.
It is a remarkable statistic, and it effectively brings our entire analysis full circle, because a scoring record from 1917, established during the volatile era of interleague challenge play, still stands securely in the record books right alongside the modern achievements of superstars like Gretzky and Brodeur.
It's wild.
Summarizing everything we have explored today, the evolution of the Stanley Cup final is a testament to endurance. It began as a loosely organized amateur Canadian Challenge Cup. It survived administrative chaos, shifting league alignments, the Spanish flu, alternating roster sizes, and significant legal challenges.
Just to become a highly structured, internationally broadcast corporate juggernaut.
Exactly. Yet legally and historically, it continues to carry the exact DNA of Lord Stanley's original gift from 1892.
So the next time you watch the cup being hoisted, with the crowd roaring and the broadcast beaming out globally, remember the depth of what you are actually looking at. It is a piece of silver that survived the collapse of rival leagues, complex court disputes, and the utter chaos of early professional hockey.
This raises an important question, though. A concept to leave you pondering. If we reconsider that 2006 Ontario court ruling the decision, stating that non-NHL teams maintain the legal right to challenge for the Cup during a lost season, hypothetically, if the NHL were to completely shut down its operations tomorrow for any unforeseen reason, what amateur or independent hockey club out there today would actually possess the audacity, the organization, and the skill to step up, issue a formal challenge, and attempt to take Lord Stanley's Cup all the way back to its 19th century roots?
That would certainly be the ultimate modern challenge. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the archives. Keep seeking out the rich, complex histories behind the spectacles we watched today, and we will catch you next time.